Welcome to the Profitable Farmer Podcast, where it's all about increasing the profitability of your farm by working smarter, not harder.
We're in for a fantastic podcast interview today. I am interviewing Jeremy Hutchings, and Jeremy's a really good mate of mine, and is the incoming CEO of the Farm Owners Academy. So it's been a big decision to have Jeremy come on board in our business, and I want to talk a lot about why we've made this decision, and we cover a lot of ground. Where I talk a little bit about some burnout that I've been experiencing, which is so normal when we're running businesses, but also letting go of certain things that I'm doing in the business that's really not in my genius. And I think you'll get a lot from this conversation, and I'm very excited to have Jeremy involved in this business. And he's going to be also running some podcasts while I'm off having a break. And I know he's going to do a great job because he's such an extraordinary guy. He's from an agricultural background. He runs a farm. He's been coaching for many years. He really gets business. And so we're very privileged to have Jeremy involved as the incoming CEO. And I'm sure you'll get on well with him as much as I do. So I'll get straight into the interview, but stick around. There's some great lessons in this. See you later. Jeremy Hutchings, great to have you on the Profitable Farmer Podcast. How are you, mate?
Very well, Robbo. Great to be here. Thank you, mate.
Now, where are you? You're currently down in Wagga Wagga.
That's exactly right. So I'm at our farm, which is about an hour north of Wagga Wagga in the Muttama Valley, which 3 weeks ago looked wonderful, Robbo, and all of a sudden now we find ourselves with fairly dry hills and feed, but dry feed on the ground. Yes.
Yes, mate. So, mate, I'm very excited to do this interview and all this chat with you because we're going through a pretty big transition in Farm Owners Academy, and I just feel there's a lot of learnings to pass on through this transition, Hutch. And mate, before we get into it, just for the benefit of everyone, do you want to just share just a glimpse of your agricultural background?
Yeah, sure, Robbo. Happy to. So I grew up on a family farm about half an hour south of Wagga at a town called Yerong Creek. My father was a really high performer in agriculture, a Nuffield scholar, and really 30 years ago pioneered computers and analysis into the industry. He's recently finished his PhD quantifying risk and volatility in different farming systems in agriculture, but I've always admired him as a farm consultant and farm manager. Learned a lot from him growing up, studied agricultural science and economics, Robbo, in Melbourne, worked with elders on their graduate cadetship for a few years, and then moved into corporate finance in Sydney. Lasted about 2 years in corporate Sydney. The bright lights got the better of me and I wanted to be back in the country, and so moved back into Victoria initially, farm consulting with two really progressive farm and agricultural consulting companies down there in Mike Stevens and Associates and O'Callaghan Rural Management, and was very involved with the Farm Management 500 benchmarking program, which was a great initiative 15 and 20 years ago. And in the last 12 years, I've been focused more on bringing business and entrepreneurial training and business coaching into small businesses across regional New South Wales and Australia. Really excited now, Robbo, to lean back in to the agri and the agribusiness sector and to be part of the farm owners team and to focus once again on supporting you and your team to bring business coaching and this training, if you like, into agriculture.
Mate, and we are just so excited to have you involved with Farm Owners Academy. And Hutch and I have such a history together from coaching and working with businesses from all industries and really focusing on helping companies learn how to take their business to the next level. And Hutch, it's just farming is is one of those areas that both of us agree in, right? That can benefit so much from what we've had the privilege to learn as business coaches.
I think absolutely, Robbo. It's surprising how outside agriculture, plumbers and physios and vets and architects learn their technical trade and become so proficient technically and become such good operators. Yet nowhere in that training necessarily do they learn how to run and grow a business and learn the art of entrepreneurship. And
Yes.
I look at agriculture in exactly the same way. And, I studied agricultural science and economics, and I know so much of that was technical. And even post uni and learning on our farm, so much of the training that I was involved in agriculture was technical in nature. And I think there is such a place, absolutely, for business owners to learn the skill of running a successful business concurrently with being a good technical operator.
Absolutely. And so I just wanted to firstly talk a little bit about our decision of having you coming in, Hutch, to become the CEO of Farm Owners Academy. And then I wanted to talk about the actual role of CEO. And I know you've been CEO in previous roles, and while we're going through this transition, what it means for us as a business and for me as an individual as well, and why I'm going through it. I think it's a very healthy discussion. And then I just also wanted to drill in a little bit about this zone of genius versus zone of excellence versus zone of competency, etc. I think there's some fantastic things to learn from what we're going through that I feel we can pass on to farmers. And if it's okay, I just want to come straight out and be vulnerable enough to share that I've been a dad now for 14, 15 months. And it's been a really intense year, a very exhausting year, combined with leading and running a business. And Jeremy, who's is a very close mate of mine, has been across what I've been going through. And Hutch, I'm one to come right out and share that burnout. Me experiencing some burnout and some exhaustion is certainly one of the reasons why I need to have relinquish some roles and responsibilities of the business. And we're going to come back and really talk about this, because I think this is a big area, correct? That sometimes, Hutch, there might be a person that's leading a business, but there's that saying, correct? If the captain of the ship stops rowing the ship, the rest of the crew will soon follow. How often do we see this occurring in businesses? Quite a common occurrence, correct? An owner / leader losing some mojo through just purely from some burnout.
Yeah, absolutely, Robbo. Firstly, I really appreciate you being open on this topic, and I completely get just how challenging it can be to be trying to grow a significant project and at the same time wrestle with those early years of being a father and all of that. It's a really intense time of life. I reflect back, I've got 4 children, Robbo, as you well know, 11, 9, and our twins are 7. And I distinctly remember, mate, when our twins hit about 18 months, 2 years, that was that moment in time where I realised that, the complexity of the life that had arrived to me, I found myself in a similar position, I feel. And I set up my business then to be under management enough that I could claim a 3.5-month holiday. And my wife and I set off and did a amazing 3.5-month outback trip with our young family. And that was a turning point for me. And I mean, Robbo, it's my belief that as many of 80% of businesses outside agriculture, the businesses fail primarily because the owner runs out of that mojo that you talk about, and they find fatigue trying to carry all the hats of business management, and they burn out. And I think men, perhaps often we're the worst at this, that we just knuckle down and keep on pushing, and can arrive to a spot where fatigue is real. And unless we do something with that proactively and strategically, then we can be the thing that keeps our business from continuing to grow.
Mate, it's been a big thing for me, and probably a hard place to admit that I didn't think that I would get to that layer of burnout. But you're absolutely right. It's coupled with a challenging year of parenting, and far out. I've got one son, but it's been a challenge for us from health issues of him, Oscar. And by the way, he's fine. It's just been a lot of allergies and allergic to milk and allergic to bread, all the stuff that parents go through, and also made health issues with me, and recognizing that I'm a personality type that likes to be a high achiever. So I'll push hard when my body's screaming, stop. I don't listen, and I'll drive through that and just work even harder. And the way that I describe it, I just hit a point where I reached what's called decision fatigue, where I just found that making decisions was really challenging. I found that I was getting really sloppy with my management of the team. In fact, I was avoiding it. And this is where remorse can start creeping in a little bit, where you start getting a little bit remorseful towards the job, but it's nothing other than tiredness, right? But Hutch, that's one part of the equation. And when the student's ready, the teacher shows up, because, Jeremy, mate, you've been passionate about this space. For how long now have you gone far out? I wish, I would have loved to have been involved in what we're doing here. And you've been deeply passionate about this space for years on end. And I will just share this. I was catching up with a couple of friends, and I got an SMS from Jeremy, and it was, mate, how would you feel about me I get involved as a CEO? Hutch, you've just finished up a project, correct? And you're in this position of you've got some capacity, you've got some space and time, and out of the blue, Jeremy sends me this message. How would you feel about we partner up in some way or another, and I become your CEO? What was the thinking behind for you sending that to me, mate? Because, at the time I didn't realize it, but today it's music to my ears, and I want to come back around and talk about why it's music to my ears.
Robbo, a couple of things there on what you've just said. Firstly, again, you sharing that fatigue, that's wonderful, because I think it must be real for so many of our listeners. And so just before we move on from that topic, I just want to sort of urge that if you're out there and you've done your 10 or 12 or 24 years in business, and you find yourself not as clear and not as crisp in your decision-making ability as you have been, then just check in on what you can do to buy yourself some time and space to have a break so that you can re-energize. Or look in that micro adversity for your next leverage point, which is exactly what Robbo's doing. And I'd take my hat off to you, Robbo. As a mate, I've watched the Farm Owners Academy grow over the last 4 or 5 years. And I'm so impressed and delighted by what has been achieved, and I get a sense of just how hard you and your team have worked to build this and to turn it into this world-class learning platform and training program and business coaching solution for a really important industry in the Australian landscape. I think what you've created is outstanding. And I guess as an observer of that, I arrived to a point 4 months ago where I was holding down a CEO position for one of my clients, and that finished up. and I found myself with some time and space. And having been completely supportive of all of your efforts with your team over the last few years, it was a pretty simple text to send, mate, to arrive to a point where you and I might have the chance to team up. And I'm really excited now to help in any way I can add more value to your members, but also to look at how we can take the Farm Owners Academy and see it supporting more farmers in more regions across Australia in years to come.
Yeah. And I get very excited, an element of goosebumps when you share that, because I just know how much you're the right person for this, and your passion and your agricultural experience mixed with your business skills. And it just gives me so much confidence to be able to let go. I call it the old letting go of the vine, Hutch, which is one of the most difficult things we can go through as business owners. That is, can I find someone else that I can actually let go of some responsibility to, and have that trust, if you like, that they're the right person. We call it get it. They want it, and they've got capacity. They get the job role. They want the job, and they've got capacity to deliver on that job. And so, mate, and we'll talk about my 3 to 4 month holiday shortly, but I just have this enormous confidence that I can hand over a big list of the current responsibilities that I carry as the CEO of Farm Owners Academy that don't necessarily match my genius, which I feel, Hutch, you've got just more of a genius around. You and I know each other really well, and I've got a space that I'm great at, and having known you, I also know that you also bring a whole new layer of expertise and leadership skills that I don't necessarily have nor like, which I'm looking forward to discussing with you as well, because I think you're doing me a significant favor, and you're doing the business a significant favor. And I hope I'm not putting pressure on you, mate, but it's a win-win, right?
That's exactly what, as you were speaking, Robert, that's exactly what was coming up for me was the concept that, when you've reached a really good decision point, when there is at least 2 and ideally 3 or 4 wins. And I won't go into that this webinar, but if it's right for me and it's right for you, and there's potentially real upside in this for the team and also then perhaps for our community, then that's the ideal outcome, isn't it, for a key decision? And I'm grateful for your comments, and you and I have tracked together for so long over the years in business coaching, and absolutely we've both got our strengths. What excites me most about this, beyond you and Sonny and Oscar getting to have that break that we were fortunate enough to have now 3 years ago, is you being able to step into your genius and give more energy and time to a part of business development and growth that isn't my skill set. So equally, the marketing space and the sales side of things that, and there are the really strong skill sets, Robbo, that you have clearly in teaching and training and entrepreneurship and all of that. But for you to be able to just relinquish some of the CEO duties that you've been dedicating time to this point and allocate more energy to helping us grow and expand, I can only see farm owners continuing to increase the level of growth that we've been achieving, which is really exciting.
Mate, it is. And I feel this is such a hidden opportunity for farmers, that often engaging someone to come into your team, there's 2 mindsets. There's a mindset, I can't afford this, is mindset 1. There's another mindset, is what might happen bringing this expert in that has a list of skills that I don't necessarily have, and what might we be able to do together as a team.
Yeah. So,
And,
Robbo,
and that becomes an
go on.
investment.
Sorry.
That becomes an investment. And mate, if it's okay, I just wouldn't mind being, again, very honest and sharing the roles in the, if you like, the CEO level that I don't enjoy. If you felt
Go
that
for
was
it.
because this is again being very vulnerable and honest, but Hutch is right. I love getting something off the ground. Give me a project, give me a deadline. Like, for example, getting this podcast off the ground, brilliant. Get it moving. Getting the business off the ground, brilliant. I love that side of things. I love the challenge. I love taking something from a nothing to something. So the entrepreneurial shit side of things is very exciting for me. The strategy, the marketing, the first phase of business is really dynamic for me. I'm very challenged. I'm very motivated. Hutch, something happens when I have to start managing team members and, dealing with, as a business gets to a certain size, that the next phase, if you like, for whatever reason or for whatever it is, it's not the thing that I love. In fact,
Robbo, there's 3 or 4 examples of that. You've been so successful creating something significant.
yes.
And I love that metaphor, that the person who runs the first leg of the relay
Yes.
isn't necessarily the best person strategically to run the second. And
Yes.
that's how I see this, is that you are the A-game athlete at the first leg of the business relay. And in contrast, doing a startup and getting something from zero to first base, that's not me, my genius. But I think strategically, I bring most value to an established business that needs measured, thoughtful, structured, and well-organized growth. And that's where I think this can work really well, in that you've certainly run the first leg of the relay and you've got us in a wonderful position. Now it's time to hand the baton, and that's an outstanding opportunity for everyone, I think.
Mate, look, it's exciting, and the thing about all of these decisions, if for whatever reason it doesn't work out, then we can decide on that later. There's no, this is concrete forever. That nothing is, right. Everything is so flexible. That's what I love about business and life. We're on this sort of this journey, and we have our ups, we have our downs, and right now there's an opportunity to hand over a large portion of my responsibilities. As you said, recharge the batteries. I'm still not going anywhere. I'm still involved as an owner of Farm Owners Academy, and I'll be coming back in more of my area of genius. And I just want to separate this for a moment, Hutch, because if you can imagine, we've got this zone of genius. I will just share my screen for those that can see this, but we'll read it out. Sorry, mate, I'll just bring this up. I had it open, but I've lost it. Won't be long, because I think this is a really dynamic understanding of how to go about letting go of areas that aren't within your zone of genius, or worst case, zone of excellence. And I'll just share the screen here, Hutch, whilst we're going. So, can you see the screen?
That's just coming up, Robbo. Yeah, thank you.
So,
you might maximize that if you can.
I will just maximize that. So genius is what work do you so love doing that it doesn't seem like work? What work do you so love doing that it doesn't seem like work? And then the next one, which aspects of your work generate the highest ratio of positive results compared to time spent?
Highest payoff tasks.
Yeah,
Robbo, it's a great definition. And I'm keen for you to reflect on what percentage of time do you think most business owners, farming or other, dedicate to being in their genius?
Very minimal, mate. Like I would say that people spend about 4% of their time in a genius. in their genius. And I just want to make the point here that I believe every human being on the planet is a genius. You know, I don't look at the Albert Einsteins and, you know, and say he's a genius, and he was a genius, but he was a genius from an intellectual problem solver. And now he was able to spend significant more time in his genius because he understood his genius, Hutch, and therefore created his life around his genius. But, you know, this goes, for me, when I was at school, we had the guys that were gifted at athletics, right? That was their genius. We had the guys that were gifted at craft and arts. That was their genius. We had the intellects. That was their genius. So I believe everyone has a genius. And you know, many farmers may have a genius of just being the most incredible technical farmer, right? They're just so, they absolutely, you know, being in the sheds, for example, shearing, they might just be so good at it, and wool classing, whatever it is, that's their zone of genius. And maybe running the business they hate doing, right? And this is an interesting point to note as well. But so I think people spend minimal time in this, or very rarely even question, you know, what is my zone of genius? Correct.
It's a great definition, Robbo, that it's work you love doing so that it doesn't feel like work. And you know, I think to your point, you either love the process of growing a business, perhaps a bit like I do, where it's the engineering around business development, or you might be that technician, a bit like a dentist or Roger Federer or Hugh Jackman, who just want to do that one thing or two things really well, and work out a way, excuse me, to leverage your time away from all the backstage or off the court activities. And it's a really important decision point about, do I want to be the CEO responsible for growing the business, or do I want to choose a part of the business that I'm great at technically that becomes my primary focus?
Yeah, well, mate, let's look at Greg Johnson for a moment, who's co-founder of Farm Owners Academy, who birthed this idea. I would not be here if it wasn't for him. None of us would be, mate. This podcast wouldn't be in existence if it wasn't for Greg. Now, Greg, we had a three-day meeting down on Kangaroo Island where we built the vision. This is 5 years ago, of Farm Owners Academy. And Greg, genius is in doing benchmarks and helping interpret a benchmark to a farmer to show them how to triple their business profits. And this is why this is such a major part of our Platinum Mastermind. But Greg's been crystal clear from the onset. That's what he's best at, and that's what he wants to do. Now, he's a smart guy because he's delegated out running of the business, and he's brought in business partners, and you know, he's brought in me initially to get the business to a certain level. And mate, it's genius, isn't it? What he's done, because he hasn't even had to worry about running the business or growing the business. He gets to create a job around what he's passionate about, what he's best at. And for him, it's not like work. That's a great point.
It's absolutely right that he gets to focus on that technical skill. What he has done, and this is a key point in this, Robbo, is he's surrounded himself in people who are better at their specific task or their responsibility in the business than he is. So I think Greg would be the first to say that branding, marketing, website development, training, platform development, administration, they're not his genius. Yet he's partnered with you, and with you has built out a pretty high caliber team, so that he's been able to delegate to you, trust you and the team, and somehow in all of this stay focused on his strong suit, which is a great example of what we're talking about.
It's fantastic. And so what's happened over the last 4 years, Farm Owners has reached a point where all of a sudden I'm getting pulled into my zone of excellence and zone of competency. And just for a moment, I just want to draw the attention to, well, I'll just go down through this. Zone of excellence is what do you consider, sorry, Hutch?
We might just need to explain this for those listeners that aren't seeing it, that there's 4 quadrants, Robbo. There's incompetent, competent, and then up to excellent, and then into genius. Perfect. Would you mind just explaining perhaps those 4 quadrants before we talk about where you're finding yourself? Is that okay?
Yeah, mate. Incompetence. So the zone of incompetence, what do you consistently get negative feedback about in your work? What do you do that just about everyone can do better? Right. So, mate, my zone of incompetence would be administration / spelling / dotting the I's, crossing the T's, creating a contract agreements. Like that's my incompetence. Detail work. I'm terrible at it, hate it. That's why we've got people involved in our business. So competency, what work do you do that others can do just as well or better? Competency, what work do you do well, though it doesn't feel totally satisfying? So I'm going to share this in my case. My competency is managing team members, leading team members, running meetings. It's not work that I get satisfied enormously off. I'm okay at it, but people can definitely do it better than me, Hutch. My zone of then the next one's up excellence, zone of excellence. What do you do what do you consistently get positive feedback about in your work and life? What do you do better than just about anyone else? So I'm still really, really good at this stuff, right? But it may be not quite my genius. An example of this for me would be presenting on stage. Training farmers, educating farmers. I think I'm probably unconsciously good at it because I've done it for so long, but it's not my genius. It's not my 4%. And then of course the genius one, which we've mentioned, which I'll state again. What work do you so love doing that it doesn't seem like work? Which aspects of your work generate the highest ratio of positive results compared to time spent? And mate, it's really, it's taken me 20 years to really figure out my zone of genius, really, because I've tried so many things.
And that's okay, Robbo. I think so many of us don't think critically about this, and we find ourselves falling back into our comfort zone, which is probably just the competent quadrant, which is just, in a farming example, it might be just the technical component of sowing, spraying, monitoring crops, harvesting, checking the sheep, keeping core stats, shearing, landmarking, etc. Whereas if we stop and really think about this, there's a great question there that sort of suggests, are there other people that can do this work just as well or better than me? And this is our leverage point. If it's $25, $30, $40 an hour tasks, and we can seek to build out a team and empower them to take on some of these activities, where can you move to so that we can focus more of our time on a higher value activity? I think of my dad growing up, Robbo, and he was a really successful local farm consultant, and he would spend about, I'm going to say 60% of his time consulting to a sort of decent subset of some 30 or 40 farmers locally, because that was his highest payoff task and him in his genius. Yes. And 40% of the time, he would be back on the farm overseeing the running of the farm. But we had 2.5 men on our farm who were both with us 38 and 32 years respectively, that were doing the day-to-day most of the time. And freeing my father up to be able to focus on strategy, planning, and farm consulting. And I think that's a great example of him building out a team that was able to set him free so that he could focus on higher payoff tasks that were more in line with what he loved doing, which was helping people improve.
Mate, it's and this is business. This is the definition that you and I were both taught when we became business coaches, of creating a commercial, profitable, enterprise that can work without you. This is
Yep.
according to the Action, Jeremy and I are both franchisees of Action Coach. That's where we started our journey. And I do actually believe that that definition is really strong. How do I create a commercial, profitable, so a professional, profitable business that has the ability to work whether I'm there or not? And for me, that's the ultimate goal of a business owner, Hutch, because if you don't create that, you've created yourself a job. And you also have to respect, you have to get your ego has to be put to one side, because I'll just come back. For me, I have a very big ego. I mean, I'm not going to delude that I don't. And it used to be 50,000 times bigger. So when I first got into the world of coaching, Hutch, I wanted to be seen as the person on stage, and the coach over here getting the results, and all these sort of things that kept me trapped being the doer. And really over time, I've learned, you know what? I've got to be comfortable as an owner of a business engaging and finding others to do this work and get out of their way and note that they can do it better than me. And I think when you arrive at this energy point, you start making much smarter decisions and not only that, by engaging the team and removing yourself out, the business has a much higher chance of succeeding as well, because with that extra added time, my thinking can come alive, my strategic thinking can come alive to really see what everyone else can't. So, mate, it's, I finally now totally grasp the power of building team and getting out of their way and letting them grow the business for you. It's very powerful.
It is absolutely, Robbo. And I want to acknowledge you here that having tracked with you in business coaching and in business generally over the last 12 years, I've seen your ability to recruit people and back them. And what I see a lot of other business owners do, and I think to their detriment, is that they bring employees in, and maybe not as high a caliber individuals as that you were recruiting. But then we stay on top of them and micromanage them, and treat them, for me, and you mentioned it before, treat them a bit more like an expense than an investment. And there's a difference there in how we turn up to our people so that they arrive, feel empowered, and go the extra mile and set you free, rather than just turning up with an expectation that they're just going to do a job for you. I guess I'm keen for you to share your spin, if you could, on what's prompted that. Where's that come from, that ability or that behavior, if you like, to bring people in and get out of their way? Because I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah. So I feel it's all come from knowing if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm actually the dumbest. And it's the realization that it's an ego. It's our ego that thinks that we're the best person for the job that stops us growing the business. You have to come in from the energy of, if you really want to run a highly profitable company that can work without you, Hutch, you have to have the belief that there's other people out there that are better than me, period. And therefore you have to, if you like, dim your ego enough to realize that I am not the smartest person in the room, and I don't want to be the smartest person in the room, because that's the dumbest thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of farmers, mate, carry this belief that I am the only person that can do this. No one else can do this. I can't let go of that. If I let go of that, they'll never do it as good as me.
That's the point, I think, is that there's that notion that can be ego, that is, they won't do it as good as me. And then we go out to seek that out to find evidence of that. So the moment they don't do something as well as we do, we use that as a justification or a validation for why I need to stay in that job.
But to answer your point, mate, you've hit the nail on the head. Of course, it comes back to recruiting well and knowing exactly who you need and who do I need to build around me to help this business succeed. And if I
Robbo,
was to leave an amazing task for you, for the listeners, it's sitting down and working out, if I was to employ a dream team, not a second grade team, a dream team, who would I have in that dream team? Who would I? What am I missing in this business? Do I need someone to cover the marketing? What type of traits does that person have? Do I need someone that's really good at running meetings? And do I need someone that's really good at implementing everything that needs to get done? Who do I need for a financial expert? Who do we need from a leadership point of view? Who do we need in that business? If we knew we couldn't fail, who would I hire? If I knew I couldn't fail, who would I hire?
And Robbo, brings us back to the importance of two things, I think, is if it is then about getting the right people on the bus, and Gary at our deep dive in his presentation nailed it, I thought, last month, that we've got to recruit people into specific roles that are better than us at that role. And so that brings us to needing to be really good and really clever at recruiting. And I think, as an observation, most business owners and most farm owners do recruiting the traditional way, and we kind of end up with what we've got. I think there are great people out there that can do our roles, those roles really well. We've just got to be really creative in our recruiting. And then it also speaks to the importance of strategic planning and having a really clear view of what that dream team needs to look like 2 years from now. And with that deadline that you touched on, and then breaking that back down so that we've got a roadmap for the recruitment we need to do, the roles that we need to fill, and the order with which we do it, so that over time you can achieve the sort of freedom that we're talking about that can arrive you into your genius.
Yes, and Hutch, this is a process that may be unraveled over 3 to 5 years. So 5 years ago, it was Greg and I, okay? And then it was Greg and I and a part-time administrator. And then it was Greg and I and a full-time administrator. Then it was Greg and I and a full-time administrator, and then an IT person. And then we went a coach. And then we went coach number 2. Then we went coach number 3. Then we went a second administrator. So we've now currently got Greg and I as the owners of the business, you sitting in the CEO role. Underneath you is an implementation manager / operations manager. I'm now in marketing manager. We've got 3 coaches. We've got a second full-time support girl. We've got an full-time IT person, right? So this has unraveled over the last 5 years. Why have we been able to achieve that? Because we set a vision 5 years ago with a big plan for the next 10 years. And we've also been able to create, if you like, profitability to pay for all these resources or revenue. And we've got, this is back, mate. This is take control. We took control from the onset with a very clear plan that this is not an accident, Hutch.
Absolutely. And the methodical way in which you've gone about it, incrementally to arrive to that team, is the only reason now, Robbo, where you're able to pass that baton and step away confident that the team's going to cover and this business will actually grow while you're away, which links back to that definition of a successful business. But you're right, it's a speed kills. And if you think you can do this in 6 months or 12 months, I think we might be kidding ourselves. Businesses do take time to grow, and it's a 3 to 5, sometimes a 6 or 7 year journey, with good strategy and with good rigor around the plan that's set to achieve this.
Yeah, I think you need to have a plan to grow the business to enable the letting go and creating the freedom. It's exactly what some of our clients have gone through. They've been able to maximize profitability phase 1 and then put systems and people in place phase 2.
Yep. To your point, that's exactly what this program's about for our farmers.
Take control, absolutely.
Is to help them move through the ordered process around which to arrive to a point where you can have a 3-month holiday, confident that your business, your farm business and your team are going to be completely fine, and even improve things while you're away.
Absolutely. So, mate, I am really excited to have you stepping into the CEO role. And one of those tasks is going to be hosting and running this podcast, which I'm equally excited about, from your ability and some of the ideas, some of the interviews, some of the skills, and some of the content that you're going to be able to bring to our listeners. Hutch, I know you're excited about the journey, and as I am, but I'm just so happy to make this handover and this transition. And I'm sure, mate, you've got some exciting plans on where you can take this podcast.
Absolutely, Robbo. We're in the process now, as we move towards Christmas, to lock down some really cool interviews with some significant players, and some great interviews with our farmer members, as well as our team. So we've got a pretty good run sheet coming together for the podcast, and I've got big shoes to fill, Robbo. You've done an amazing job with this already, and we look forward to bringing continued value to our listeners through this podcast, as you have, moving forward.
Mate, thank you so much. And Hutch, if there was just to close out this podcast, if there was an action or anything that you could do to summarize for our listeners today, what we've discussed today, what would it be?
A good piece of advice given to me, Robbo, a few years ago now, was that there's 3 things that I do that can contribute up to 90% of the value that I can bring to my business. And so I'd encourage people to go and grab a blank piece of paper, a cup of tea, a pen, and go and sit out in the garden or under a tree and just take time to get clear on what that is. So for Hugh Jackman, it's clear, but for a surgeon, it's probably operating, meeting with the next people that they need to operate on, and then checking the people they just operated on. And every other part of that practice has been over time delegated through a practice manager to a team of nurses and administrators and others. So I would encourage people to think about themselves a bit like that surgeon, or a bit like Hugh Jackman or Roger Federer, and just take some time to define what is it that is the thing that I love to do that doesn't feel like work. What is it that is my genius? And then with that, let's explore over time how you can move to that strategically, and set yourself free in the process.
Yeah, mate. And if I was to add to that, and I know I'm being quite forward with this, but this is why we created Take Control. You know, Take Control is designed to help articulate the steps, if you like, that need to be taken to create a highly profitable farm that has the ability to work without you. It's done in such a sequential order that it's a workshop, it's a course that you complete as you go along. And mate, I'm giving it a plug because I don't know anything better for farmers on the planet that can help them. I've got that much belief in that program, and it's 50 years combined experience. So that would be my step. If you're not going to do that, then buy the E-Myth and read that book as a starting point, which I'm sure you'll talk about in a future podcast, mate.
Absolutely. And Robbo, as an outsider looking into that training program, Take Control, that you mentioned, it truly is world-class. And a credit to you and Greg and your team for what it is designed to do. And absolutely, it's a great starting point for our listeners in order to start on the journey of creating that leverage and that freedom that we talk about.
Yeah. It's just to be clear, it's at farmownersacademy.com/take control. I think it's on the website. Anyway, mate, I appreciate it, and thank you so much. And please share this with another farmer if you think it will help. But you'll be seeing Jeremy on a podcast soon.
Great stuff, Robbo. Thanks for having me involved, and look forward to seeing you off on your holiday with your family and to a really strong year and 2 and 3 ahead with the Farm Owners Academy. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.